Welcome to the BritHick episode 15 with Connor and Aaron. I hope everyone's doing well. Right, I guess we should just kind of crack on. As a lot of people involved in rock and metal have been discussing this week, is the sad passing of Riley Gale, the vocalist for Power Trip, who were widely regarded as probably one of the next wave of bands that were going to make it big. So, yeah, I don't know what you want to start discussing about it, Connor.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it goes without saying, like R.I.P. and obviously thoughts go out to his family and his bandmates. And I think what's been most striking from the tributes I've seen made by people that knew him or bands that had toured with Power Trip and made a relationship on that level. The most kind of striking thing was it's how genuinely nice and genuinely nice and genuine. That's good. Of a person he was. And whenever someone passes, it's awful. And you tributes pour out and stuff, and I want to choose my words carefully, but sometimes it's kind of feels like it's kind of like a copy and paste, like condolences, blah blah blah.
It's a hollow sentiment.
Yeah, and I don't think it's always meant in that way. Genuinely, some people, a lot of people are genuine, like, yeah, this is sad, but it's just it was really apparent from like reading the posts that people had made, like that knew him and had met him in passing and stuff, just what a decent, like, upstanding person he was, and like just a real one, and that's, I think that speaks volumes, really, especially in an industry and a scene, I guess, where it's quite easy to come across a lot of superficial or fake people.
Yeah. I think some people, when Nightmare Logic came out, some people were like, if they hadn't researched into the band, were maybe like, oh, they've just come from nowhere. I saw some things about, oh, they've got backing and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, the band's been around since 2008, and they had released, that was their second album, and they'd released an EP before that. And I think when people realised that actually it wasn't just some thing where they had lots of money, it was the fact that they had been touring a lot beforehand, and then they'd released something that managed to catch on, rather than it being that it was forced down everyone's throats.
Exactly, it wasn't like an overnight sensation.
No. I can't remember how I heard it. I know that Executioner's Tax was on a NXT pay-per-view as like the theme song.
I think, and I'm not just saying this to bloody claim the points here, I remember the first time, like, I listened to the album, and it was the day we were doing the demos for Scalps.
Right.
At Matt's house when he was still living with his parents, because I had it on the way, and I was like, oh, I think I chucked it into the group. I was like, I'll check this album out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know whether, like, you may well have heard a couple of tracks before that instance, but I know that was the time that I first heard it, and I was like, everyone listen to this. Like,
yeah, I mean, it would have been before. That would have been before it was on that pay-per-view, because I was living in the flat at that point. So if we were demoing at Matt's parents, then it would have been before then. But yeah, like, I mean, I never saw them. You did, so you know kind of more what they were like live, and which is kind of as important, if not more important, than the recorded output.
Yeah, well, I only saw them once, unfortunately. But the show that I saw him at, and I'm not just saying it now in light of what's happened, but it's one of the best performances I've seen from from a metal band. Just no nonsense. Like, so for context, it was on the tour they did supporting Trivium, so it was going down the bill. It was Trivium, Code Orange main support, Power Trip, and Venom Prison opening. See, another banging band. And to be honest, like I do like all of the bands on that lineup. Like I know a lot of like people are like, oh, Trivium, but I like them. They're good at what they do. They've had a couple of albums I'm not fussed about, but overall, like I think they're a really good band. They're really good at what they do. But obviously quite different bands to those other three bands.
Yeah.
On that bill, but that's another cool thing. They seem to put the effort into actually like bringing out bands and giving them a wider audience and stuff. But that's another discussion. But anyway, I was like really excited to see Power Trip and also like Code Orange as well. That was the first time I'd seen Code Orange, and that was on the Forever cycle. So obviously they had a massive amount of like, they blew up big time on that album.
Yeah.
And then like Power Trip set, basically, yeah, it's just one of the maddest things I've seen in a venue of that size. So it was at Brixton Academy, which is like, what's that, 4,500 cap?
Yeah, something in that region, yeah.
Yeah, so 3 people got knocked out over the course of the set, which was fucking mental. I've never seen that happen in like a big show like that. Obviously, you see people catch a knock at like a hardcore show or something, but yeah, it was just wild. Like they were like, it's like razor sharp accuracy. The live bands, like no frills. Literally, like from a music nerd point of view, it's literally like it's guitar amp, overdrive pedal, loads of volume. That's it. You know, smashing it as hard as you can. Like, and like Riley as a front man, like so much energy like on stage. Just didn't stand still. Like, and it's weird actually. Like, it seems really obvious, but it didn't really click until someone mentioned it the other day. And it's like a lot of comments I saw like from detractors about Power Trip, just like, oh, it's just like basic thrash and whatever. But I was like, oh, but it's, don't get me wrong, it didn't reinvent the wheel, but I was like, there's something to like me and you both, I think, like obviously really like thrash, like and stuff. But there's stuff to their sound that I didn't see other people picking up on or referencing. Like it really like, especially like Nightmare Logic, bits of that really remind me of kind of like Beneath the Remains, like Era Sepultura, like hard kind of thrash, like not the frilly stuff. And it had the energy to it, the aggression to it. And it's when someone mentions like Power Trip played thrash metal, but they took all the energy of like the hardcore scene with them. I was like, yeah, that's it. Actually, that's what it is. That was the thing I couldn't quite quantify.
Yeah, it's weird because I know that like they had major thrash influences, but that wasn't what I heard when I was listening to them. I was hearing obituary mixed with hardcore.
Yeah, it's really crossover, isn't it?
Yeah,
like real crossover kind of sound.
When people say thrash, I think of stuff like Annihilator, not like crossover stuff, which is probably where.
Yeah. But yeah, that like the set they played was just absolutely incredible, and I was really excited to see Power Trip because I really liked them, and I was like really excited to see Code Orange. But personally, for me, like after Power Trip played, like it just seemed kind of inconsequential.
Yeah.
To the point where we all left 3 songs into Trivium.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, like, not to knock Trivium, because I do like them, but after seeing, like, a band deliver a set like that, and it's raw energy, it's it's foot to the floor, like, playing out of their skin, and hearing Trivium afterwards of, like, it's so professional, and the production's so on point and stuff. I was like, this just feels like having a shot of whiskey and then having a shot of Evian water. I was just like, yeah, this is pure and nice, but it just doesn't hit me in the same way. So I was just like, this feels pointless after that, you know.
I think there's for Code Orange to go on after is quite a jarring change as well, because of Code Orange's reliance on electronics.
Yeah, there's a lot more like obviously Code Orange are like more experimental in their approach, I guess, and they're a different band, you know. It's apples and oranges comparing Power Trip and Code Orange, but I don't know, it was just like and Code Orange were like fantastic, don't get me wrong, their set was great. It was like, and people I was with, like Graham and stuff, I think that was their probably up on the same level as like Power Trip, like the kind of impact it had at that show.
Yeah.
But just for me, I expected to be absolutely flattened by it, and I was just kind of like, oh, all right, like, you know, it was really good, but it just didn't. I just think it was a lot to. I think it was a hard act to follow on that night, Power Trip, like 100%.
I feel like Code Orange are a harder band to get right sound-wise by a long way.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, this was the, you know, I mentioned about the simple kind of setup of Power Trip, and the reason I kind of mentioned that was like in a big room like that, you know, their sound came across really well. It's such a stripped down, especially compared to, you know, most modern like metal bands and stuff. Like it literally is. It's like a JCM, a tube screamer, and a delay for the solos. There's no rap gear going on. There's nothing flash going on, and it's just that big tone. It's clear in the like in a big room like that as well. Whereas for Code Orange, it was like very like their mix was like very bass heavy. Like I struggled to make a lot of the guitars out.
Right. Yeah.
And with some of their stuff, obviously, you can kind of get a little bit lost in translation.
Yeah, just because of there's weird sections, so it's not as obvious what's going on.
Yeah, I think generally that kind of music's hard to get right in a big room, like sound wise.
I think it's hard to get right in general, like with stuff like that. Any kind of band that has experimental or like electronics or relies on like symphonic backing tracks or anything like that. Bands like Cradle and Dimmu Borgir, it's very hard in a live situation for that to be consistently good. Obviously, Dimmu and Cradle were. Well, I was going to say that they're big enough to have their own stuff, but Code Orange are bigger than both those bands, so it's like a moot point. But I know that those bands are notoriously difficult to have everything come out clearly because of the amount of stuff that's going on, which in various sections of Code Orange songs is the same because they're relying on various keys and electronics to
especially
the sound.
Especially with the like as I was saying, this was on the Forever cycle, but what you've said there is like especially more now with the underneath material and stuff. Like I really obviously once touch wood, when things start kind of getting back to normal in terms of shows next year, I really do want to see them like playing new material. And that, obviously it is more intrinsic, like even more intrinsic in the new stuff. Like the electronic stuff's like everywhere.
Yeah, it's weird because if I think of those two bands, it's almost like Power Trip was the best of taking late 80s, early 90s crossover and making it modern, and then Code Orange is kind of the best of mid 90s hardcore, but also stuff like Nine Inch Nails and making it modern.
Yeah, definitely. And it's two examples of a young band, like, you know, relatively speaking, and they are have been adventurous with their sound, and it isn't just a copycat of something that's been done before. You know, there's recognisable elements there, but it's pushing it into a bit of a new territory, I guess.
The thing with Code Orange as well is that although they're getting more acclaim, they haven't brought in stuff from that other band, which I guess would have been more commercially viable. Is it the Adventurers?
Adventures. Yeah, it's kind of just kind of like jangly alt rock. I like them, but it'd be cool. See, it'd be nice if they did another album, like, but I don't really see it at this point. I think it'd just detract to not in terms of like it detracts from Code Orange, but just obviously like the level they're at now and the course they're on. Like, how do you set the time aside to do that? You know.
Well, if they're at a point where they're like, we don't want to write Code Orange stuff, we want to write something else, or they're doing stuff. Think like Devin Townsend when he was writing kind of Strapping Young Lad stuff. At the same time he was writing the Strapping Young Lad stuff, he was also writing Devin Townsend band stuff, because they played off of each other. So it could be that when they're writing, they'll be like, well, this is obviously Code Orange stuff, but then we've got these sections which is kind of like the antithesis, and can be put into the bank for adventures. And then maybe over time they'll have enough stuff to kind of sit there and go, oh, we've got enough to do an adventures release, and then they can put it out however they want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can never say never on those things, I guess.
It's like the way that we write stuff, and then it's like, oh, well, this isn't going to work for this band, so I'll just sit on it and see if at any point down the line you join a band or do a project that sounds like the stuff that you've written at that point in time.
Yeah.
It's like, I wrote 20 minutes of Doom music, but it's like, well, I'm not going to use it for anything because it's so out of the wheelhouse of anything that I'm doing right now. It's just 20 minutes of music that I wrote for the hell of it that won't see the light of day because I haven't got anything to put out with it. So it's just sat there. Matt's a prime example of that. He's got albums and albums of different genres of music that are just sat there. He's recorded it all. He just hasn't put it out because he hasn't got a vehicle to attach it to.
He's like Prince, isn't he?
Yeah, it's like the vault of albums that he's got. So, I mean, maybe they'll go down that route. That at one point they'll look at what they've got and be like, well, there's enough here to do an adventures album. I don't think they're in any particular hurry to write again. If they've only just released Underneath, they probably want to do a full touring cycle for that when shit gets back to normal. So definitely. It depends if they write on tour. Like I don't quite get when bands are able to write on tour. It's a bit of a weird one. Like I don't know if I'd be able to do it, but then it's different when you're at a different level, isn't it? Like you've probably got more time on your hands when you're doing like a month of touring.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to like how focused you can keep yourself as well. Like, you know, because it's easy to get distracted when you're just out and about and like whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess kind of like pulling back to our main thread. So obviously, yeah, Matt, like it's been a big loss, I would say, it's been a big loss to the immediate community, obviously, like surrounding Power Trip and stuff. But if you look at, like you've mentioned, you look at the course Power Trip were on, they would look to be one of the newer bands that would like break through to the next level. It's like, obviously I don't know what's going to happen. Like I don't know if the band are going to continue or they're going to stop. Like no one knows apart from them right now.
Yeah.
But they are to call it a day, or because it seems like obviously it was a big part of that band and its personality and stuff. It's difficult, isn't it? Like when it's difficult when a band loses any member, but especially when it's the front man.
Yeah.
Someone so charismatic as that.
You could tell it was him, like with his mic stand and stuff. The way that he, like, no one really ever made a point of having a straight mic stand.
Yeah.
The way that he had one, and the way that he used it on stage as almost like a prop.
Yeah.
Kind of made him distinctive. Obviously, voice as well. But I don't know. Like, it's going to be a weird one. I think different circumstance. So it makes me think a bit of Skeleton Witch. Because Chaser and Skeleton Witch okay, he got sacked from the band because of addiction problems. But when he went and they got a different vocalist, it seemed like they had to change their sound to suit
the vocals.
And they seemed to like lose their way a bit. And I hope that something like that doesn't happen with Power Trip. That either they decide to call it a day, or rebrand, or they can find someone like Riley. Obviously, not a clone, because that would be its own problem. But
yeah,
just have to see how it goes, because I did hear that supposedly they were meant to be in the studio or something. So
yeah, I think like I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they've been working on like a new album like this year or something.
Yeah.
Which would make sense because Nightmare Logic was 2017.
Yeah, and the album before that was 2013, so it's like 4 years.
Yeah.
From album to album, so just have to see.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. Like what I guess I was trying to convey there is like if they do call it a day, it's a big loss to, you know, that kind of, oh God. Well, it's a big loss to this kind of wave of like newer bands, because it's something we've discussed before. Obviously, there's a big problem within metal and rock, I guess.
There's no headliners anymore.
No, that's it. There's a big gulf between the bands coming up who are like, you know, on the front of magazines and stuff, but still it's like, yeah, but festivals still aren't making them headliners and stuff, and there's only so many more years like Maiden and Metallica and that can keep headlining shows and festivals and stuff.
Yeah.
Because even as a big fan of a massive fan of Metallica personally, like I really wouldn't be fussed if they called it a day tomorrow. Their best years are behind them. They've got their legacy. They've got nothing more to prove. They're not as good live anymore. Anyone can challenge me on that, but they're going to be wrong. And yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by the last album, but their best material is been and gone. I wouldn't shed a tear if they hung it up. You know, it's like cheers for the riffs, lads. Same with Maiden. You know, they can't keep going for that much longer. Like they can still deliver a really good live show. I know, but they're not getting. You know, it's demanding, and they're not getting any younger.
No.
And you know, Slayer have gone now. And I personally believe like that is it. I don't think Slayer are going to come back. I do think that is it.
So Slayer aren't coming. They're going to go on a tangent here. Slayer aren't going to come back. However, there is so Kerry has 2 albums worth of material of stuff that he's doing under like a solo project. But the other members are Paul Bostaff, Gary Holt, and the main rumor is it's going to be Phil Anselmo on vocals. And I don't know who's doing bass for it. There's no official name for it or anything like that. But as far as I think Paul Bostaff was just like, Kerry's not going to write songs that are different than what he's been writing. So
no, of course,
it's basically going to be Slayer under a different name. So you can't. And the problem is that he'll do that, and then he'll get the slots that Slayer were getting before.
Maybe. I mean, it'd be interesting, you know, because I think there's, not to go too on a tangent and turn this into like a big Slayer episode, but I think even with the, you know, even in the last few years, there's a definite split in the Slayer fan base. Even after, you know, Jeff Hanneman died, you can't help that. You know, that's a shit sandwich, like all round. But you know, so Jeff was gone, original member, and then when they got rid of Lombardo again, I think that a lot of fans were like, well, it's not really Slayer to me anymore. And I'd be interested to see the reception to like a Kerry. Like people will enjoy it, but I don't know if it will get the same profile and stuff, where it will be seen as like, oh, it's just Kerry King's project. It's interesting. Maybe I reckon it'll have a big boom initially because that's just the way these things are. It's he's an established figure. And you got the legacy of Slayer and everything, but I think there'll be an initial boom, and then I personally think that would peter off after a couple of years. I might be wrong, but that's just my view on it.
I guess it depends on the quality of the output.
Yeah, and I'd be really interested to see, like, this is the thing, right? If Kerry, like, not to slag Kerry King off, because that's low hanging fruit, and personally, is big influence to me. So, but if you look historically at the songwriting in Slayer, like, a lot of the iconic songs was Jeff.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see like the level of quality of all of the songs and the consistency of the material. Like it's a big, even though it sounds stupid because it's his own shoes, but it's big shoes to fill.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'd rather that Gary Holt just went back and did more Exodus stuff.
Yeah, well, they're in the studio now.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like Garrett, like obviously even his, I don't know when this Tom Araya, when this Kerry King stuff's going to surface. But I think like for Gary Holt, like Exodus is his primary focus again.
Yeah,
seems like it. But yeah, they're actually recording right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can't remember why I went on that tangent. But yeah, there seems to be a wave of bands that if everything went the way that we would want it to go, would be the next lot of headliners, I guess. I mean, I guess we've kind of seen it in the last 10 years with bands like Mastodon and Behemoth and Ghost. But they're still, people always say, oh, well, these are the bands that are going to be the next Metallica or whatever. But they're not. None of them are. None of them are big enough. Like, they might have the notoriety in these circles, but there's no general public knowledge of them.
I think maybe Ghost might be an exception to that. I don't know.
I think if you ask Joe Bloggs on the street who Metallica are, and then ask him who Ghost are, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like,
it's hard, isn't it? Because
we were saying about this about Radio 1. Radio 1 in like the early 2000s was still playing like the latest Slipknot release. It's like they're not going to play the new Ghost song. It's not on general airplay. I don't even think Radio 2, which normally has more kind of guitar music, would have it on unless it was a dedicated rock show.
Yeah, it's just, I guess it's the factors, obviously, like the times we're in now and how the industry has changed, like for music, like Metallica and bands of their ilk. The industry was absolutely thriving. Bands were financially supported and stuff, and they kind of, obviously, they still worked hard. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean it like that, but there was a lot of money flying about then, and even like you look at Slipknot and stuff, and that was like, I think the early 2000s. Someone can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure in across the board, like the early 2000s was the peak of physical music purchasing, like across all genres.
Yeah.
I was listening to Riot Act the other week, and it's when they were doing the Broken Records episode on Results May Vary, but like I think that was like the 4th Limp Bizkit album.
Right. Okay.
And they were doing a reference against Chocolate Starfish.
Yeah.
And on its first day of release in the US, Chocolate Starfish sold 400,000 copies.
It's mental, isn't it?
And in its first week, it sold 1 million.
Yeah, so the million's platinum, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas now, for comparison, I can't pull an artist out of the air, but so I would say the most commercially successful form of music now, and I mean it's in its umbrella, all of its umbrella terms and subgenres or whatever would be rap.
Yeah.
Because it's massive in America, it's massive over here, and like a big mainstream rap artist, say like Nicki Minaj or someone,
Yeah.
strong first week sales now would be like 300 to 400,000.
Yeah.
And this is from things I've read and like watched and like researched. So, and that's massive now. Like rock, like a metal band, a rock band would not get a sniff of anything like those figures these days. But just that, just to show how much the market and the industry has changed in the last 20 years.
Yeah. Well, the when you see charts and stuff, it's not normally done with physicals. It's streams,
downloads. Yeah. So yeah, like it's obviously the industry is kind of exploded in terms of like the access points, but the market is kind of shrunk.
Well, the market's overly saturated. There's too.
Yeah,
there's
I guess
too, there's too
supply
much.
and demand as well.
Yeah, there's too much.
Yeah,
like the thing is that obviously we didn't live through the 80s and 90s. How many bands were there that failed? We don't know, because there isn't any. You'd expect that someone would be like, oh, I've got this Thrash Bands album from 1988 that never did anything. But I mean, I've researched a little bit into it, but do you know what I mean? It's one of those things as well where like you go back and you try and look through all of like the tape trading for Norway and stuff. There isn't a band that didn't do anything that isn't known about. It's weird. Like, you'd expect that there would have been some bands around that time in that area that just didn't succeed.
Yeah.
But I can't find any. I guess people would say potentially like stuff like Covenant, but they're still a well-known band in that circle. So it's one of those weird things. Is like, surely there must have been more bands around. I can't just sweepingly say there were just less bands, which meant that more people were going to shows, and there were less shows, so more people went to the shows, and then these bands that were there became more successful.
Yeah, I think an element of that maybe is obviously now it's so much easier to have access to the tools to record your music, which is great. So I think, me and you could literally finish this obviously we're in a band together, so this is a bit of a moot point anyway, and we've released stuff. But we could finish this podcast and go, should we just write a 2-man EP this afternoon and like put it out?
Yeah.
And we could feasibly do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's out there, and then people have got access to it. Whereas I guess back, there probably were maybe not as many, but obviously there would have been like loads of bands in those decades that you won't have heard about. But I guess maybe a lot of that is some of them would only have ever gotten to the point of playing live and may not have been progressed to the point of being able to record their music. You didn't have as easy access to being able to do that then. And if there's no like recorded documentation of it, like it's a lot easier for that it's a lot easier for that to be forgotten, I guess.
Yeah.
Because word of mouth only goes on for so long, doesn't it? Like, I remember this band. Like, there'll be bands from, Milton Keynes from 2000s and stuff that some people probably really fondly remember, but we're like, I don't remember them at all.
Yeah.
Because even then, like, not everyone had access to home recording and stuff. It's crazy when you think about it now. It's such a given. Like, I'll just demo something at home. Whereas I remember my first band, like, we had to like go into our school had a really like rudimentary recording setup, and like to make a demo, like we had to go in with like one of our mates who was in sixth form at the time at the weekend and record this demo, and it sounded like we recorded it at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
But that was what you had to do then.
Yeah, it's difficult because it's like even the bands that you say are unsuccessful or were passed over or whatever still had some level of notoriety.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so many bands now. You're swamped in them. And I don't know if it's just because we're in the scene where we are now, but there's so much choice that it's almost like a divide and conquer. It's like no one can latch onto a band and kind of support them up to the next level because there's just so much. There's so many different bands that it becomes difficult.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like every week there's like a new band. It's like you need to listen to this band. It's like, whoa, like I personally find it really hard to keep up. Like,
yeah,
probably sounds awful as someone like actively involved in it, but it's just like I don't mean it in a bad way. Like I can't be asked, but it's just like fuck. There is so much stuff coming out, and it's just like there's loads of stuff I haven't got around to listening to, even from like bigger bands and stuff.
Yeah, it's like we post stuff that we say, "Oh, you should check out this." Just like, well, I haven't listened to the new Ingested stuff.
No,
I just haven't got round to it. It's difficult. I guess it's the way that we consume music now, as well.
Yeah, it is. It's instant, isn't it? It's that like it's almost option paralysis almost.
Yeah, but I mean as well. Do you sit for an hour at home and just sit and listen to an album?
Sometimes, but it's rare. Like rarer than it used to be.
Yeah, like I don't. Like I'm always doing something else. I'm never giving an album my full undivided attention for the entire length of the album.
Yeah.
Like normally I'd probably go for a drive and listen to it or something, just so that there's like less distraction. Which sounds stupid because I'm driving and obviously my mind is on driving, but
I know what you mean though, yeah. I've actually found that recently with he's going on about running again. I've found that recently with like when I go running because
that's your time to
because obviously running you don't really have to think about much. You as long as you're putting one foot in front of the other, you're pretty much golden.
Yeah, as long as you don't run in front of a car, you're fine.
Yeah, and you can because where I go, it's very minimal where I'm near any roads and stuff. Like I'm quite lucky around here. Like I do tend to like zone because I find unless you think about the running, it's you don't think about yourself getting tired and stuff, so you can zone out. And I have been trying to make the habit of I'll put some music on that I've not listened to or a new album I need to check out because twofold: A, I can actually take it in a bit more and like enjoy it.
Yeah.
And B, when it's something you're not familiar with, you don't consciously know when the songs are going to end, so you don't know how far you are from finishing.
Right, yeah.
Which is nice. You're not like, oh, right, I know I've got like 10 minutes left and I'm fucking dying. like,
yeah.
But yeah, I know, like, I think, modern life, isn't it? You constantly got something on the go.
Yeah. The last time that I've made a point of listening to an album was that Meth Witch album. But again, I could listen to that because it was just so batshit. Like it didn't fall into a lull of it being, and now it's going to go into this bit and then it will go into this bit, which I find happens quite often with a lot of stuff. Curse of doing production, that is. But yeah, I don't know. Like going back to the point is. Losing Power Trip is like losing Slayer or I'm trying to think of like another band, like losing Obituary in 1991 or Slayer in 1988. Like just when you big bands nearly at that point where you think they're going to be incredibly influential and be big, and then losing them.
Yeah.
Because that's what that Trivium tour was like, was those three bands that were the supports. It was like, well, these are the next bands that look like they're gonna break through for their respective genres.
Yeah, definitely. You look at Code Orange, definitely done that.
Yeah.
I know obviously for Venom Prison, like everything that's happened this year has been a bit of a bastard because I had a lot of like international touring and stuff lined up.
Yeah.
Like America, Southeast Asia, and stuff like that. So obviously,
they were going to play Download Australia and
and for of all of those bands, definitely the most extreme.
Yes,
but relative to the extremity of the music, getting a big profile, and well deserved, like music's on point, really grafted with the touring and stuff, seems to always be on tour.
Yeah.
It's all relative, isn't it? For that kind of respective genre and stuff, that we're going to the next level. Code Orange has just exploded. It seemed like Power Trippers, and I don't mean this in a way where it's like, oh, that scene's a stepping stone, not at all. But obviously, hardcore's like a smaller, not a smaller scene, but I guess it doesn't blow out into the mainstream as much.
Yeah.
Whereas metal kind of does have a path out into more mainstream kind of conscious, I guess.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Hardcore's kind of in its own little bubble.
Yeah, hardcore's booming, but you have to be aware of it. Going back to the point you made, if you ask Tom, Dick, and Harry on the street, do you like Jesus Piece? They'd be like, what?
Yeah.
They wouldn't know.
I think you could say that to a metalhead.
Yeah,
and they'd be like, who the fuck are Jesus Piece? It's like,
yeah.
Unless you're...
I guess it's weird. It's weird for me, I guess, because most of the people we know that are into metal are into hardcore as well. So I forget there are people that don't cross the two.
Yeah, just go to any of the gigs that we play and you see them.
Yeah. Why are you not more death metal?
Why don't you just play one subgenre of music? Why have you got to do all these different things?
Why you not sound like this band that I want you to sound like? Oh,
it's not fucking boring.
But I mean, I'm trying to think of other bands where, I guess, examples of bands where this has happened and it has really kind of stopped the momentum. And then there's obviously instances of it happening and the band has really kind of come out of the ashes of it.
Feeder.
Yeah.
I was going to say Ash, but Ash wasn't someone dying. I think the band just fell apart.
Yeah, they're still going,
They are, yeah.
Obviously, it's they're not the same kind of levels they used to be. I'm trying to think of really... AC/DC, I guess, is a prime example.
Yeah, someone did compare Riley to the Bon Scott of our generation, after he died.
Because it's I'm not a massive AC/DC diehard fan. They got some bangers, but I couldn't tell you the catalogue inside out. But I know obviously there's some of the more hardcore fans or diehard fans be like, the Bon Scott stuff is the only stuff worth bothering with. It's the best stuff. But then it's no mystery. It's obviously a fact that the Bon Scott era is the most commercially successful.
Yeah.
And you would argue actually is some of their best songs. So that's a band that's definitely obviously kind of gone with it. I guess Metallica as well after Cliff died.
Yeah.
Because that's, if you think in the context, definitely the most musical person in that band at the time.
Musically accomplished, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always a really interesting one for me to think about what they would have gone on to sound like if he hadn't have died. But then obviously Metallica went on to become the biggest metal band in history.
Yeah.
And then
you've got Randy, but Randy was going to quit anyway, so it's So it's difficult to say like that Randy Rhoads was going to push Ozzy into a different direction because, for all accounts, he was going to quit after that touring cycle anyway.
Yeah.
So
I thought you meant Randy Blythe at first. I was like, was he going to quit? Like, we said Randy, I was like, oh, right.
I realised after I just said Randy, I was like, oh wait, hang on, you're probably thinking of Randy Blythe.
To be honest, probably because I was listening to As the Palaces Burn yesterday.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the other ones is just like, I don't know. But then the with these things, it's like the musical output stopped. Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, Jimi Hendrix, like they're normally with those. It's like, well, they're the figurehead completely of the.
Chester Bennington.
Yeah, Chester Bennington. Like they haven't done. They haven't done anything after that.
I mean, I don't imagine. I don't think they could do Linkin Park without him. Like because it's just a very distinctive voice, and obviously part of that band and stuff.
Chris Cornell, but Soundgarden weren't really going at that point anyway. He was just doing his solo stuff.
Yeah.
So these aren't so much bands that would like cut down in their prime though. There's the on the way up. Mike from Evil dying.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one. That example, because obviously like it's like, would Evil have gotten bigger had that not happened, or were they had they already reached the kind of peak of how commercially, I've said it again, commercially big they could have like been playing that kind of music at that time.
I mean, they were still on a steady upward trajectory at that point.
Yeah. Because I mean, I guess the delay that it caused in a new album coming out probably would have been a factor in like the momentum and stuff. But I wouldn't say the album they put out was a bad album. I think it's solid. But yeah, I guess it's the factor of like there's always it's so time sensitive, a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, if you add 6 to 8 months on something, then it's, if you're still establishing yourself, it becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
Like, they would have probably wanted an album out in like 2 years after Enter the Grave came out. And then yeah, it's, and obviously that was a childhood friend of the band and everything like that, so it just kind of changes. It changes the dynamic. No disrespect to Joel, because Joel's a very good bassist, but
I know what you mean. Definitely, I think it obviously took the wind out of their sails, like on a personal level. Yeah, like definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, oh God, I've completely lost my train of thought here. Oh, God, sorry, my brain is just detached from my mouth. Yeah, I mean, I'd hope one thing as well. I mean, I'd hope that if, for example, right, so the situation at present, if Power Trip do continue, I would hope that the fan base give like the new frontman whatever, like give him a fair chance. You can't expect them to just be the same person again. It might be, like you're saying, the sound might slightly change, but to accommodate a different vocal style and stuff.
Yeah.
But it'd be quite callous to be like, well, it's not what I wanted, so I'm not interested anymore. It's like, it's a really shit it's a really shit thing for a band to have to go through.
Yeah. But the fan base is blatantly going to do that, because that's what happens all the fucking time with any kind of member change, regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah, it's very like entitled, isn't it?
Yeah. It doesn't sound the same, therefore I'm not going to listen to you anymore.
Yeah.
What a fucking load of bullshit that is. It's like people. Is that people falling into the trap of every album that they put out is the same. It's really boring. Oh, they've changed their sound. I don't like it. It's just like fuck off. So it's people that popped off about the Cattle Decapitation album last year. They were like, "Oh, it sounds like pop." What?
What?
Like, are you fucking serious?
Fucking hell!
Just because of the pitched tunnel throat vocals that Travis does.
Yeah.
It's like I don't understand. It's that level of entitlement. It's like, what the actual fuck are you chatting about?
Yeah, it's.
But I mean, I'm on the opposite side though. I don't listen to anything before the Harvest Floor. I don't like any of the Cattle Decapitation discography before the Harvest Floor came out. So.
Yeah, they're a band that definitely got better as they went on.
Yeah, but people would 100%. Say that they got worse.
They can fuck off. Like
there's people there's people that listen to them up to the Harvest Floor, and then there's people like me that listen to them from the Harvest Floor onwards.
Yeah. I say they can fuck off, that's a bit harsh, like that's me being just blunt, but I don't think you could argue reasonably that they haven't become musically better from that point onwards. Like personal taste is one thing, obviously. Like you might prefer the earlier stuff, that's cool, but it's like the band have objectively gotten better.
Yeah, but people will argue that to the death because grindcore shouldn't be technically proficient. It's
like when people try. I don't think of them as a grindcore band. I just think they're a death metal band.
They started as like a grindcore.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, like for me, it's the same. It's the argument with Carcass. When people try and argue that the first albums are better than Heartwork, it's like no, they're not. Don't lie to yourself. Like,
yeah, I don't know. It's the difference between grindcore and melodeath.
Yeah, it's like I will die on the hill that Heartwork isn't only the best Carcass album; it's one of the best metal albums ever recorded. It's fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
And again, this is like it's personal taste. Like I can deal with someone saying. I can fully accept someone saying like I prefer the earlier stuff. It's more to my taste. Cool, that's fine. We've all got bands like that. Like you got a preference of an era or stuff. That's cool.
Yeah.
But that material is objectively better. It's better. It's better written. It's better played. It sounds better. I know production's like subjective as well.
Bad production can put me off an album though. Case in point, Leprosy. I cannot listen to Leprosy.
Do you not love that gated snare?
That snare, that snare fucks me off so long, but I cannot listen to that album. I'm just like, nope.
Proper Casio snare.
It's horrible.
I was talking about this with it's like with Chris Barnes and George Fisher.
Yeah.
So when you've got Cannibal Corpse fans that refuse to they're like, no, Chris Barnes era or nothing. Chris Barnes is a better vocalist. It's like Chris Barnes is not technically a better vocalist than George Fisher.
Yeah.
Like Too Many Mutilated is still banging, like vocal performance wise. Like I think that was Chris Barnes' peak, like vocal performance personally.
Yeah.
But fucking look at this is the year 2020 and look at what they both sound like now. Come on.
Yeah, he's awful. Like absolute dog shit now.
Like Chris Barnes sounds like 60 a day cat lady.
Yeah. He can't even do the one thing that made him distinctive anymore, which was like the high pitched stuff, and he can't do it now. It just sounds like someone has just gone, "Oh, I can do metal vocals," and just walked into the vocal booth.
Yeah. It's like when your dad does a piss take of death metal vocals.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like now.
So bad.
Just it's not good. Trying to think of like other bands that have gone up and down depending on member changes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The one band, there's another one as well. People saying that like Obituary, they don't like Obituary now. I was like, it doesn't sound any different.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't like the way that it sounds too, I don't know, upbeat. It's like, hang on, the stuff in the 90s sounded the same. Why are you saying that the modern stuff you don't like? It sounds the same. Like, what is the difference?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like it. Why? Oh, because of... It just sounds too jolly. It's like... If I take a song off of the last album, and I take a song off of fucking any of the other albums, apart from Slowly We Rock, probably... I don't know, like, so take something off of Cause of Death and listen to it, it'd be like... They sound almost identical. Tardy's vocals sound the same. The guitars sound the same. The drums sound the same. The riffs are pretty similar. Like, that's why people just like to shit on stuff that comes out now just because they can.
Yeah.
Which is another problem for bands coming up in the current situation. There's no support from the fan base. They're looking for a reason to cut you down.
Oh, definitely. It's like, and there's a lot of people as well, and I'm not speaking of anyone that comes to mind, like on a personal level or whatever, but just by en masse, I guess. I think there's a lot of cases of Emperors Need Clothes, like people just jump on a band because it's the band they're told is like the band you should be listening to right now. And then as soon as the next band comes along, it's just like it's just dropped. There's no long-term support there.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's just they're looking for a reason to dislike something.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feeds into that as well. Everyone wants to build it up, and then it's like it's quickly like if any excuse comes to like knock it down, it's like yeah, it's sick. Let's all pile on. It's kind of like the British public are really good at this with music.
Yeah.
As soon as something gets, it's like we wanted to get too big, but not too big. Like as soon as you hit a certain level of success, it's like oh, they're just up their own asses now. It's like oh, what? Like it's really everyone loves an underdog. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Not. But as soon as the underdog wins, it's like
yeah,
pull the rug from under you.
Exactly. Like you know the some sections of the music press and that like were notorious for that as well. It's like really quick to build something up and then knock it down.
Or retroactively do the opposite when they've marked something as bad. And then we'll retroactively make it good when it's flavour of the month.
Yeah, definitely.
I saw that with Darren Gray in the late 2000s. They released an album in 2005, and I think it got like a 1K review.
Right.
And then the next album got a 5K review, and then they did a retrospective on the album before. And then they gave it a 4K review.
Right.
And it's like, you're doing that just because that's you want to push them.
Yeah.
And they were really pushed, and they were on like a Kerrang tour and whatever else. And then the album they released after that was really all over the place experimental. They still gave that a 4K review. But then it just tanked. Like they gave it a 4K review and didn't really say anything about the fact that it's really all over the place experimental. They were just like, yeah, it's Darren Gray, it's probably good, 4Ks.
Mm.
And just kind of left it at that because they wanted to push it. And then because they went really out there, the support just kind of like fell out the bottom of it because they'd gone really odd in their experimentation of their song structures and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the opposite of that's a problem as well, where it's like you know there are bands that even if they release like a subpar album or something that's actually like a stinker, they're never going to get a bad review.
Yeah.
Like, and this is like a lot of people won't like what I'm about to say, and I'm not saying it to be edgy, I'm not saying it to upset people. And actually, this ties into the initial theme of what we were talking about, and I didn't even intend this. But obviously, when Tom Searle from Architects passed away, it was a tragic, horrible loss, a massive loss to that kind of, I guess, like genre of bands and stuff, and a massive loss to Architect. He's one of the primary songwriters. Awful circumstances. He died, passed away from cancer. It's fucking shit. Wouldn't wish that on anyone. But personally, all of that aside, I think the album they came out with afterwards was really boring.
Yeah.
Right? And this is not a knock on them personally. I'm not saying it to be spiteful, but listening to the album, I was like, I think this album is boring. Music press unanimously were falling over themselves to praise it and stuff. And I was like, do you genuinely think this is a good album, or are you being sympathetic to the circumstances that have birthed this album?
Yeah.
And I don't think that is good for anyone. In terms of if you're keeping bands at a certain prestige just by proxy because of the profile they've already gained, it's not a fair critique for the art. And then you're keeping that kind of glass ceiling for the bands below that.
Yeah.
Because everyone's just it's not a kind of subgenre I'm particularly au fait with, and it's not something I'm massively into. But that whole kind of tech thing, and so say that Architects album come out and it's been given an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 or 5 out of 5, whatever, and then say I don't know North Lane, even though I think at that point they were pretty shit by people from accounts of people that are into that stuff. So they release a legitimate 10 out of 10 whatever album, but it's just not going to get through, is it? Because everyone's going to be like, well, it's not as good as Architects. It's just that kind of thing. It's just I just think there's too much of that in the music press. It's kind of they've got their darlings, and then they've got people out there will just cut down without any kind of consequence to it. It's whatever, we're kind of done with them.
They need the new shinies.
Yeah. And I think NME was a really good example, a really fucking good example of doing that. And they pushed some absolute shit over the years.
Yeah.
Especially when I was the age I was reading NME and stuff. When I think back on it, I'm like, fucking hell, loads of those bands are absolute pony. And they were just falling over themselves. This is the next big thing. It's a lot of that. It's always publications want to kind of be oh yeah, we broke the next big thing, and that it's a lot of the time it's fucking guff though. And it's almost don't patronise music fans by being oh, if you're not on this, you're not up to speed, or you're not clever, or you're not aware of what's going on. It's no, you're just trying to market something. You're just trying to synthesize some kind of movement.
Yeah, it gets to a point when you're seeing the same thing over and over again. It's well, you mentioned this last month. How about you find something else to talk about? And then it's it's because the label or marketing firm or whatever for the band's bunged them $2,000 or whatever to have it so that they're in it every month for their pre-album cycle.
Yeah.
The funniest ones that I always see is when you get bloody big advertisements for an album, you turn the page and the review's a 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
Terrorizer was great for that. They'll be it's a full page advertisement for an album. You go to the review section, they've reviewed the album, it's yeah, it's shit.
I rate that. It's you can't be bought. It's yeah, we'll take your ad revenue, but I'm still gonna fucking tell it as it is. Oh. But yeah, I mean, what was I gonna say? I guess.
On a tangent, you were saying about production being important for an album. I was saying earlier in the week about I didn't realise that they had redone Mayhem's Grand Declaration of War.
Oh yeah.
It sounds so completely different. It's mental. It sounds like a completely new album. It sounds so much better. And I was saying before about that was an era where people were just shitting on Mayhem constantly. So that album came out, and then there was an EP that I can't remember the name of, and Chimera came out. Wolfslayer Abyss, I think, was the EP. And Chimera came out, and it just got absolutely fucking panned, like, across the board. Like, all of the press were shitting on it. The people that were listening was, oh, it's not real mayhem. Bullshit, blah, 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 blah. And now, you go back and you find any of the fucking album streams or whatever online, like on YouTube or whatever, people are like, oh yeah, this was great. It was when it was really ahead of its time. It's like, you thought this was shit when it came out, and now you've gone back to listen to it and you're like, oh, actually, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, although I will say, Grand Declaration of War drums sounded absolutely abysmal, which is why they've re-released it, and now it's like, oh, the drums actually sound like drums now, rather than like you hitting a fucking piece of plastic. Yeah, it sounded like all the toms were rototoms, with just like a shitload of reverb on them.
No, what you really want is the European Legions drums.
That's what it was. It was during European Legions was during that era where they had the fake drum sounds. Like, it wasn't as obvious because it wasn't live and it wasn't like being pumped through a PA. But it's those drum samples is what was on Grand Declaration of War. And Wolfslayer Abyss. I can't remember. I haven't listened to Chimera in a while. I think the drums were more natural sounding, still triggered to fuck, but like more natural sounding.
Yeah.
It's just a weird one because if you go from, it was only a 3-year gap from Chimera to Auto Ad KO.
Oh, okay.
So Chimera was the last Maniac album.
Yeah.
And then he left in 04, 05 because of drinking due to anxiety, basically. So he needed to stop playing shows, essentially. So then they got Attila back in, and everyone was like, oh my god, it's the proper lineup, even though Maniac was the vocalist before Attila in the first place. Let's forget about that. And then they released Auto Ad KO, which is such a... I'm trying to think of the right word to describe it. It's out there.
Yeah, it's a
challenging listen.
It makes you work a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. You kind of need to listen to it with headphones. To kind of get it. So going from something that was really, really clean and clinical in Chimera to Auto Ad KO, which is the exact opposite of clean and clinical. Like, the drum sounds change, like, in the song.
Yeah.
And everything's just kind of a weird mishmash of just different things. And basically everyone fell over themselves and were like, this is the best Mayhem album ever. Because of it being just so ridiculously difficult to listen to. They're like, oh, black metal's meant to be challenging. It's like, this is like beyond black metal. This is like some avant-garde shit.
Listening to that album, I don't mean this in a derogatory way. Like, listening to it made me feel a bit ill.
Yeah.
It is mental. It's like,
it's very claustrophobic sounding.
It's not easy listening. It's queasy listening. That's what.
But everyone fell over themselves and were like, yeah, this is the best thing ever, because black metal's not meant to be easy to listen to. It's like, it sounds nothing like the stuff that you said that you wanted them to sound like.
Yeah.
You're just saying it because it's different. And now if you go back, those, and again, the people that are like, oh, Chimera was really good, they're the same ones that are like, yeah, Auto Ad KO is really hard to listen to. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's meant to be.
And then I can't remember what the album after that was. If it was Psychic Warfare, I think there was a big gap. I think, and then they released Demon, and Demon was a really good album. Demon sounded more like kind of the Mythonas or Satanas kind of stuff, but like up to date than any of the other stuff that they've done.
Esoteric Warfare.
That's it. I was saying Psychic Warfare, and I think I'm getting confused with a Clutch song.
Yeah. Bloody hell, 7 years gap. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a big gap. Was I right with Was I right with the 3-year gap between Chimera and Auto Ad KO though?
Yeah, bang on.
Yeah.
Bloody yeah, there's a song on Esoteric Warfare called Psy War, so maybe that's where the
yeah, maybe. I think they released that as a single.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a song on Auto Ad KO, Wall of Water. That's mental.
Is that the one where it's just like the drums have about a 7-second reverb tail on them?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I was about to hit play, but it's going to really confuse what's going on in my ears. But yeah, that album is just mental.
It's challenging, but I guess it just goes. It's going to sound really, really arrogant. It's like people don't know what they want. People were shitting on Chimera, and now looking back on it, it was like, oh, this was a really good era for Mayhem. And at the same time, they were dying for a Dos Minadas Dos Satanas. I can never pronounce that properly. Copy.
Yeah.
And then they were like, yeah, Auto OK is the greatest thing ever. It sounds nothing like the Banana blah blah blah. That album.
Yeah.
It's not similar in any way, shape, or form. But like, oh yeah, it's really good because it's really difficult to listen to. Yeah, so
it's always been a kind of funny one with with black metal in general. It's always been a kind of funny oxymoron to me. It's like it's meant to be it is meant to be challenging and not easily accessible, but then a lot of the fans just want it to sound like the stuff from the 90s, and it's just like, well, isn't that counterproductive?
Yeah, it's one of those things like, oh, I want it to sound like it's on a tape recorder. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, even in terms of like composition and like the style of like riffing and stuff, it's just like, it's almost become a trope now, isn't it? Like, oh, kind of like cliche black metal riff, really fast trem picking, doing some like harmonic minor pattern.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll have a blast beat. Like, that's been done loads and loads and it sounds cool, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not slagging it off, but you know, so it's like 30 years after the fact of like that being like the established thing. It's like, well, surely bands should be applauded for like moving away from that, you know. And it doesn't mean they disown like their past. It's kind of like, well, it is a genre that's meant to be confrontational. It's not meant to be like palatable and whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's
so, what do I know?
It's weird, like, because I used to be like bang on the black metal stuff and would listen to loads of it. But now it's like, well, oh, there's a new black metal release. Does it sound exactly like everything else? Yes.
Yeah.
Great. I'd rather listen to fucking, I don't know,
Cascada.
I'd rather listen to something that just like mushes that kind of stuff into something else. Again, going back to the Cattle Decapitation album, they mashed loads of like those black metal-y like trumpet chords and things.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the outliers are bands like Woden's Throne and Winterfell. They're the UK bands, though, but they do kind of clever things with their songwriting. It's not just bloody trumpet power chords, which is the lowest common denominator for that kind of black metal stuff.
Yeah, it's like the way I look at it is like if you took like a musician, like obviously like someone who could play like metal guitar and stuff, because it's don't get me wrong, it's no small feat being able to like sustain that kind of picking and that for like a 4-minute song. It is hard, but say you took a competent musician like who didn't know much about black metal and be like, write a black metal song. It's like that's the elements they're going to put in it.
Yeah.
It's like if you go, write me a thrash song, it's going to be loads of like E5 chugging. Like, you know, it's kind of like you've taken like the most basic ingredient here.
Yeah. Just do some fast palm mutes and some power chords, and then some thrash. There you go. That's that's your thrash. Yeah,
and I think it's a thing. Like, actually, just a point that I've kind of, like something I've just kind of thought of is like when I first listened to like proper, like what we consider like actual proper like black metal. So it would have been Blazing the Northern Sky.
Yeah.
So when I first got that and listened to it, I was like, oh, this is not what I was expecting, and it was tricky to like get into it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I do quite like it. There's stuff about it I like, and I like it a lot more now. Obviously, like your taste progress and you like your ear kind of attunes to that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was like, surely that's what it should be like. Like, it should make you go, oh, what? Like, fucking hell. Like, this is like, not like, oh, I don't want to listen to it, but it should make you work a little bit, you know? And it's like, if you're someone, I'm not speaking as like a proper like black metal buff. There's loads of stuff I don't know about it and loads of bands I don't know and stuff. But surely if you are, like, you should want bands to come along and make you go, the fucking hell, like challenge you in the same way like it was initially. Like, no one really hears it for the first time and it's like, yeah, this, I can really get on board with this really easily. It is like quite jarring, especially if you come from listening to like more normal, quote unquote, like types of metal and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I got into black metal the back way through classical music, so I was listening to Cradle and Dimmu and Emperor first, and then
I heard Cradle of Filth and Dimmu and stuff. And I was like, oh, cool. And then, yeah, when I heard Dark Throne, I was like, what? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I think sounds like it's been recorded in a bin.
Yeah, I think the first like proper quote unquote black metal song I heard was Buried by Time and Dust, which is like one of the later tracks on that Mayhem album that I can never pronounce properly.
Yeah.
And then, actually, no, I heard 1349 covered it, and I'd heard that first, so I'd listened to 1349 before I'd heard Mayhem, I think. And then, yeah, I'm just trying to think of like the way that I would have heard stuff, but I can't remember. But yeah, I kind of heard a lot of stuff all in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Because I was getting given CDs by someone, so I was just like, yeah, and there were blank CDs. They didn't have what they were on them, so I was just putting them in a CD player and listening to them, so I didn't really know what I was listening to.
Yeah.
That was like my introduction to like Mayhem and Dark Throne and Dark Funeral and Death and Cannibal Corpse and Cryptopsy and all that kind of stuff.
Chumbawamba.
No, I'd already heard Chumbawamba before then. That one song that everyone knows. Oh, it sounded like an elephant.
That sounded like a Formula 1 car going past. Jesus.
Is there anything else you wanted to chat about?
Just trying to think. Oh, obviously this morning, as well. Oh god, absolutely flipping chudded myself here. 1 second. Obviously Chadwick Boseman passed away this morning as well.
Yeah, it's been hiding that cancer diagnosis for 4 years.
Yeah, insane. Like, really, obviously, it's a bit like, again, like another really big loss, like for that industry, and like you think as well, like, especially like obviously most people, like myself included, like I've said before, I'm pretty crap when it comes to films and actors and stuff. But obviously, most prominent roles, most people would have been Black Panther.
Yeah, I haven't seen his portrayal of James Brown, I don't think.
No, I haven't. But you know, for like Black Panther and what it did for representation within the film industry and within like the kind of comic book film world and stuff. It's such a pivotal work, and such a prominent like character in that universe and stuff. And it's a really big loss, you know. And yeah, like when you put it in this morning, I was like, fucking hell, like it was actually a bit of a shock, you know, like you're saying, because like no one really knew about that diagnosis or anything. So again, I was like bookending this episode with an RIP.
Yeah, it's a weird one, like, because I posted like things on my Instagram for Riley and stuff because of just how influential that band was, and like obviously lots of people knew him. It's kind of different for Chadwick because it's a way more like prominent person, I guess.
Yeah.
It feels a bit weird and yeah, I watch the films, but they're not like a major part of my life, I guess, like how live music is. So it's like a weird one of someone that kind of people you knew or knew him.
Yeah.
And then there's someone who's like, oh, that's actually like a celebrity kind of thing. So it's like a weird one. I don't normally post like RIP things and stuff. But
I know what you mean. Like, I feel like it's not my place sometimes. So I didn't know the person, you know, but
yeah,
but yeah, there's been a big outpouring like this morning, obviously from like other actors and stuff. And yeah, I just think that is kind of my first thought. As like, oh, it's obviously it's a real shame, and like kind of goes without saying, but I think it's a real shame considering, you know, what Black Panther did in, you know, and what it represented, and there was, you know, there were due to be more movies made, and it's like, it is like, and he was very outspoken as well about everything that's kind of been going on in the last couple of years,
especially now with everything that's going on. And
yeah,
because it's all kicked off again.
Yeah, it just feels like a bit of a, obviously not for me personally, because as we've discussed episodes and episodes ago, it's not something I'm a victim of, but it feels like a bit of a fucking kick in the teeth for, you know, the black community and marginalised people, because it is like, you know, not to flip in generalised and that, but it's a prominent figure and like an influential person, you know, and they are speaking out about those issues, and it's a huge loss in that respect. Yeah, have someone, you know, someone in Hollywood actually fight in the corner.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton posted a thing that I saw. I didn't read the whole lot, but he was basically saying it was a pleasure to know you and to know that there was someone in the position that he was in that was still fighting for it.
Yeah,
for black representation in film.
Absolute shitter.
Yeah. We made a point of not going on about all of the shit that was going on in America this week because we've already discussed the George Floyd protests and our opinions have not changed.
Oh, no, yeah, if anything, our opinions have just intensified.
Yeah, so I'm going to sign off this week with fuck you, white supremacists.
Yeah.
Fuck you, 17-year-olds illegally holding weapons and killing people in the street and thinking you can get away with it. And fuck you to his parents, who I've just seen a photo of, and they are both massive white supremacists and gun nuts.
Ugh.
So fuck all of you. Fuck the police that let him get away with it. And yeah. Fuck racism.
Fuck it all. Fuck it all. Fuck this world. Fuck everything that you stand for. Don't belong. Don't exist. Don't give a shit. Don't fucking touch me. Signing off.
We will see you next week.
Cheers, everyone.